Welcome to Feminine Sexual Healing, the leading edge of personal growth and development. I'm your host, Amrita Grace.
I know you're scared to be yourself sometimes. This world can be so blind. But if you take the chance to trust, start to open up.
Hello and welcome to Feminine Sexual Healing. My name is Amrita Grace, and I'm the co-founder and director of the Sacred Feminine Mystery School and the award-winning best-selling author of Reclaiming Aphrodite, The Journey to Sexual Wholeness. I'm here with Nuna Isi, a woman for whom I have great respect, admiration, and love. She's been a dear friend and cherished colleague since the first time she invited me to be a speaker on her Rise Summit in 2019. Today we're going to talk about sexual healing as a path to freedom, a subject very near and dear to my own heart. Nuna Isi is a story alchemist, best-selling author, ascension mentor, and the founder of the Rise Method. To align with her soul mission, she left her successful business and went traveling the world for 4 years, together with her partner and 3 young children, lived life on her own terms, and visited the most profound places on earth. As the host of the Rise Summits and Wise Woman Rise podcast, Nuna Isi has shared the stage with luminaries like Dr. John Gray, Dr. Joe Vitale, Neil Donald Walsh, Dr. John DeMartini, Marcy Shimoff, Christy Whitman, Hale Dwoskin, and many others. Certified in numerous healing modalities, Nuna Isi specializes in helping women shift their inner stories and craft a signature story to grow in visibility, connection, conversion, and global impact. Nuna Isi will be offering practical tips on how to heal, a deeper understanding of how to unlock the sexual energy in your body, and by the end of today's show, you'll be inspired to heal your own sexuality. Welcome, Nuna Isi.
Thank you, Amrita. It is such a pleasure to be here with you. I'm truly honored.
Yeah, me too. It's always such a delight to interview someone who is so closely aligned with my work, with the work that I've been doing. We have been aligned with each other for quite some years now and have been in touch with each other for some years, and it's just such a pleasure to have you here. Let's dive right in. So Nuna Isi, what are the steps to sexual healing?
It starts with acknowledging that there was something that disturbed the sexual flow to begin with, right? I think the first step is really to acknowledge that we have been either violated or hurt or in more severe cases, physically molested or even raped, or even if we have been conditioned or our role models that we grew up with muted or transferred the idea that sexuality is anything but sacred, right? So, and I think that it really, in some way, touches everyone on this planet, including men. Because I think that the first distortion of our planet really started from the idea that sexuality is a sin, when we cut sexuality from the sacredness. And yet we all arrived here from the act of sexuality. So that already makes us all in some way sinners or not pure or anything but less than godly. So first is to acknowledge that. And then it is to look at our triggers and look at the places where we feel numb or we feel disconnected or we feel not embodied, right? And this is really goes into the trauma response, which is when we don't feel safe in our body for whatever reason. That's a safety mechanism. That's our coping mechanism. We either numb that, so we lock in those emotions somewhere in the body, and we actually takes a lot of energy to keep it there locked so that it doesn't take over. So we literally, and we do it all unconsciously, we literally use our vital force energy to keep it there locked. Or so that's the freeze reaction. Or the flight reaction is where the body doesn't feel safe and part of our soul literally goes out to the ethers and hovers there. So you can imagine as if the body is like a container of our soul, our spirit, which is energy. And there's literally holes somewhere in the body because some of the energy just went out and defragmented. So that's about bringing that energy back. That's about unlocking those pent up energy that is locked somewhere in the body. And that takes work. It takes some form of work. And I always say that it is better to do that work with a helper like yourself, Amrita, like myself, or other people that do the work, because it's really difficult to do it on our own. We need the support. We've been hurt by other people, and the healing is always through other people as well. So if you ask about the steps are the acknowledgement and then for help. And it's really important to find the right help, because unfortunately, there is a lot of people out there that they have not really healed their own inner energy, and what they offer into the world is coming from a place of unresolved pain. And we heard and we keep hearing about all these people that doing a healing with sexuality, and actually they feeding into their own fantasies or re-traumatizing their clients. So it's really, really, really important to be very discerning of who you work with, because you don't want to re-traumatize yourself. And then doing the work, and the work is somatic. I would really say that it's through the body, also through the mind. I mean, I wouldn't exclude the mind completely, because we are a mind, body, spirit, right? So it's on all those levels. I think that primarily to unlock those pent up emotions and bring in those parts of ourselves that escaped is through somatic work.
Yes, I couldn't agree more about the somatic work. And just a couple of threads that I want to pull there. You mentioned early on in answering that question that we all are impacted by sexual wounding. It's just the times that we live in, the conditions of the earth and our society and culture. I completely agree with that we all need sexual healing. And I think it's something that people really shy away from. Oh, I don't need that. I don't need that. But really, we do all need it. And it doesn't have to be difficult, painful, and hard. It can be gentle, it can be gradual, it can be slow. And it, of course, does entail looking at some of our own shadow pieces or disowned parts. But it doesn't have to be about reliving whatever trauma is in the history. And another thread I wanted to pull there too, which is really important, is that sexual healing is an unregulated field. And there are plenty of people out there who take a weekend workshop and decide they're in the sexual healing business, and they hang a shingle and say, I can heal you. But they haven't actually done their own work. And actually, for myself, it was years. It was years, and it was gradual. So it's just not something that happens overnight, like any healing, really. Just really appreciating these points that you're bringing forth, and how aligned I feel with them.
I think that you said that we all need sexual healing, and I couldn't agree more. I think that sexuality is our life force energy, and it's much bigger than just sex. It's how we create, it's how we move in the world, it's all our connections, it's what we do in the world, right? I feel that we all here, for a good reason, we all have a soul journey to follow. And when we are busy unconsciously, because we're not really aware of how much of our vital energy goes into survival, into just keeping us going on a daily basis, and that energy is taken away from our creativity, from what we can share in the world. And I found with myself and with my clients that once we release a lot of that pent up energy, it finds a different address. It goes into a different direction. And that's when we can start really activate what we are here to do and share.
Very much so. And I think part of the trick here is that no one knows to teach us this growing up. no one knows to teach us that our life force energy can feel a lot like our sexual energy, and that they teach us that sex is this thing that you keep in a box, and you take that energy out at certain times just for that sexual activity, and that's absolutely not true. It's the animates our bodies that gives us life, and that gives our life like it gives our soul life. And it's so important that we have full access to that life force energy. I can't tell you how many women that I talk to that have just, maybe they're postmenopausal, or maybe they're just not in a sexual relationship, but for whatever reason they say, oh, I don't need any access to my sexual energy. I'm not doing that right now. I'm single. I'm not in a relationship. And they essentially cut themselves off from the waist down, and they no longer have access to their life force, their creative energy, the energy that really empowers what their soul is here to do.
And then that's another coping mechanism, right? That's another almost survival of let's cut that off and live without it. And I think that it's so much bigger than just the penetration or the meeting of the genitals or even the orgasm. It's so much bigger than that. It's who we are. It's how we share ourselves with the world.
Very much so. Yeah. So one of the things you talked about was feeling safe in the body. And I know that people who have had any kind of sexual wounding and I see that on a whole spectrum, a whole continuum. Sexual wounding can be very, very mild to very severe. And so how can people feel safe in their bodies after they've experienced something scary or something that leaves them feeling unsafe?
That's an excellent question, right? How do you feel safe in your body? And I think that one of the main things to feel safe is back to the body, when we are in the now versus when we were experiencing a trauma, and meeting that version of ourselves that didn't feel safe. And I always say that it's better to be held by a professional, by somebody that can facilitate that process. And it's also very helpful to be surrounded by nature. I feel that Mother Earth is such a powerful force to remind us about the essence of the body and the sacredness of this temple body. And I found myself time and time again when I was doing healing work that what helped me a lot was lying chest to chest with Mother Earth and really feeling her currency and feeling her holding and feeling her support and her nurturing that was always, always there. Yeah, there are many tools that can help to bring us back to the body. For me, one of the best tools that I found is breath work. I feel that breath work is such a powerful modality because it's working with spirit, right? What is the breath? The breath is not only oxygen and the other particles, it's the intelligence of creation. And it's what keeps us alive, right? From the first breath to the last breath, from the first inhalation to the last exhalation, it is our life in between. And so working with the breath, we almost don't need to understand what is happening on the mind level because we really actually can't. It's like you switching the switch to have light in the room and you don't really understand how the electricity works there and where it comes from and where it goes and how it activates everything that you've got the light so bright in the room. But it works, and it's almost the same. It's like handing over to the energy that is bigger than you, that is more, and just using a technique that the breath does the work. So I found that to be really helpful. There are amazing other modalities. It's definitely not the only one, and different people find different modalities to resonating more with. So yeah, there are tools, and it's really using the tools that are available.
Absolutely. And I think, and breath work, I'm 100% with you about the breath work. And I think we can even simplify it to just say the breath. Like when we can come back to noticing our breath, even just noticing, it doesn't even need to be about changing it, but it can be a way that we start tuning into our inner selves and our inner spirit because breath is spirit, spirit moving through us. The simplest starting place really is to notice your breath and just notice what it's doing. If it feels safe and comfortable to do so, try deepening your breath. That may not be the best thing for you, but it's worth investigating. If it doesn't feel good, don't do it again. But at least notice how breathing feels, because breathing is something that we can do completely unconsciously, but it's also something that we can become very conscious of, and I love that.
Yeah, it's anchoring, right? It's anchoring to the now. And I think that what happens for most of us, especially if we experience some deep trauma, is that we disconnect from the rest of the body and just live in the head space. And many people, they live their life from the head space. And the body is just there, kind of dragging. And that's another coping survival mechanism. When we start really anchoring into the now, into the moment, even feeling into our toes and our fingers, the extremities of our body, and feeling, allowing more sensations. And when we allow some gentle touch from somebody that we feel safe with, movement is another powerful tool, especially dancing, all kinds of movement, but dancing is just such a medicine, because we again just let the energy move in the body, and the body knows how to heal. This is something we really need to remember, that the body has the intelligence to heal itself, and that the body wants to heal itself. It's about us allowing nature to take over and do what it does, and just be the witness of what is happening.
And that's another thing we're really not taught. We're not taught that by our parents. We're not taught that in school. Our deep connection with nature, that we come from nature, we are part of nature. And that is a huge healing force for us, for our bodies. Our bodies are part of nature. Our bodies are nature. This is a really beautiful thing to remember and to be reminded of. Why do you think sexual healing is key to spiritual growth?
What is spiritual growth? We are spirits in a human body, and we're here on this planet Earth to experience polarity. I think that where we come from in the spirit world, there is just love, and we don't have the opportunity to experience what we experience here on planet Earth, which is the material and the spiritual, the light and the dark, the feminine and the masculine, the cold and the hot, the dark and the light. Here we experience that polarity, and it is about embodying our spirit so that we can experience all of that. Because as human beings, we are here to experience the entire spectrum of feelings. There are no right feelings and wrong feelings. As human beings, we all going to experience all the feelings. And it's really about being able to embody that spirit in the body. We came here from sexuality. This is how we enter into this world. And if you look around, we talked about nature, you can see that in nature, everything is actually sensual and sexual all the time. And when we allowing that sexual flow in our body, we allowing God and goddess to move through. And when we block that, we actually block that connection. When we talk about sexual healing, we talk about coming back home into our bodies, embodying our spirit, and allowing our natural flow to flow. Healing is really returning back home. And sexuality is our primal force. It is our life force energy. So that is really the key. Is this answering the question?
I think the path to sexual healing is really a path back to spirit. It certainly has been for me. And I know that before I started my sexual healing journey, I felt a real disconnect, and I was on such a seeking path. How can I find my way to spirit? How can I find my way to my spiritual path? And I really couldn't get all the way there, because it's really about wholeness. Like, this is a piece of ourselves that when left unhealed, we cannot be whole beings. And when we aren't really claiming our wholeness fully, we can't really show up in relationships in the ways that we can't draw in the kind of relationships we'd like to have. And our health can suffer. There's so many aspects of our lives that are impacted by this life force energy and the lack thereof when it's shut down. There's so many ways that our bodies and spirits are impacted by that. So for me, it's all intertwined. And myself as a priestess for 23 plus years, I'm a sexual healing priestess. Like, that is my priestess path. That's my work. It's my work with myself, and it's my work with others. And it's really a lifelong path, I think. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. There's so many layers and intricacies, and we go deeper and we go into more and more depth as we grow. And I mean, I want to say that we took the God, and again, I call it God, you can call it spirit, you can call it any name you want. We took that energy out of sexuality, and I think that was the beginning of where we went wrong with the trajectory of humanity, because we can go back to the story of the Garden of Eden, when the snake gave Eve the apple, and she ate the apple, and all of a sudden they got ashamed of their genitals and they covered it. That's where the stories are starting to sink in to our beings, that there is shame around sexuality, and it's something that we need to shy away from, or again, all the negative impact that it brought. And I think that when we are able to come back to the sacredness of this act that is actually creating lives, and that it's the most intimate possible connection between two human beings. There is no more intimate connection than sexual connection. And I think that experiencing orgasms in all its shapes and colors, there is no more a connection to the now and to the power of the universe than being in orgasm. I think you might agree with me on that one, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So coming back to the now and coming back to sexuality as a path to spirit. There is no separation between sexuality and spirit. It is how we were created. It was how were created to be born and to give life in these human bodies. And it's really simple when you boil it down like that. Really simple.
Right.
Well, before we talk about what your next project is, which is really exciting, is there anything more that you would like to add to this conversation in closing?
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit about my personal story with sexuality, because I think that it might help somebody or inspire. And I just want to warn about a possible trigger, because it is my personal story. And I just want to warn whoever is listening that I'm about to share something really vulnerable, really raw. And hopefully it will inspire those that need to hear it. I experienced my first orgasm when I was 10 years old, and that was by clitoral stimulation by my stepfather. And I did not know that it's even existed at that stage. And it took me by, it was like a wave of like, what have I just discovered? And at the same time, it really intertwined my sexual energy, and especially my orgasm, with that energy of abuse. And for many, many years, I could not activate my sexual energy unless in my mind I had to activate a fantasy of abuse. And it created so much dissonance, so much heartache, so much inner guilt and shame and disgust. And it was really a journey that I have taken since my early 20s to separate my orgasm from that abuse. And that was my journey, and I have managed to do that. It took me years of working on my body and somatic healing and everything that we were speaking about today. And I think that that path created who I am. It made me explore all these healing modalities. It made me connect with the people that will be able to help me and really grow. And that was my path. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Wow, I just want to take a moment with that and take a breath with that and encourage listeners to do that as well. Perhaps you've had a similar experience in your life. Just take a moment. Thank you. Thank you for honoring us with that beautiful story and just to illuminate what it's taken for you to become the amazing leader and luminary that you are now. A lot. It's a lot. I know from my own experience as well. So thank you for the work that you have done to bring you here to be the amazing, glowing, beautiful, exceptional being that you are.
Oh, thank you.
So I know you have an incredible project that you're working on right now, and I would love for you to share a little bit about that with us. And of course, I'll leave links. All of Nuna Isi's links will be in the show notes so that you can contact her. But please fill us in a little bit on what you're up to.
Yeah, so I'm doing this project that is called Rising Sheroes, and it's a collaboration book of stories of women that turned pain into purpose. And I help those women to decode their stories. And when I say stories, I mean internal as well as external. It's the stories they tell themselves, which needs a bit of shifting, maybe transforming, maybe even changing some aspects of them. And then the stories that they now have to share with other people, with their potential clients, with their soul clients, and those stories that will create the connection, that will create that heart to heart dialogue that then leads to what they are here to offer to the world. Yeah.
What an incredible pathway to discovering and uncovering soul purpose. I love it. Absolutely love it. We'll definitely have all of the ways to contact you available, and I really encourage you to reach out to Nuna Isi and be on her email list so that you can stay tuned in to her amazing offers, because she's doing some really great work in the world. I just have this sense of this is a woman in the prime of her soul purpose, making her best offerings to the world, and I just love supporting that and being able to share that with my people. So thank you so much, Nuna Isi, for being with us today, and it's just been an honor and a pleasure to have you on Feminine Sexual Healing.
Thank you, Amrita. Thank you so much for having me and for all your kind words. Yeah, thank you.